we don't have to be going after the $10 times a million things. We can go straight for the $10,000 opportunities and the $20,000 opportunities because we look worthy of them. You also want to do that with your profile with the right keywords, right? If you want to speak, then, and you're a financial coach for men in their 40s, talk about that because there's going to be a conference somewhere that's going to be looking for a financial coach for men, right? Use those keywords. If you're a real estate agent, the community you serve is a keyword for you. People don't want your crap because they don't know you. I don't care how good it is. I don't care how valuable it is. It might be the best webinar they are ever going to see, but they don't know you. I'm not watching your webinar if I don't know you. I don't care how good it is. So you've got to take the time to build a relationship first.
If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer Podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now, let's get to it with today's guest. Hey, Digital Trailblazers. I'm super excited to have with us today Karen Yankovich. Karen is doing some really cool things, and she's going to walk us through how to actually do your own PR. People are out there trying to sell these services all the time, and I think it's really interesting to look at sort of the DIY model and how to do it right and how to avoid all of the pitfalls. So welcome, Karen. We're super excited to have you with us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Leah and Todd. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay. Well, welcome. So, okay, before we get into the details of all this, give a little context for folks. Let them know exactly what you do, where this came from.
Yeah. So, I've been around a little bit longer than social media. And in my early sales days, it was a lot of relationship marketing, and that really stems from people like being worthy of people's time before you're even worthy of their money, right? So, and it kind of naturally led me when digital marketing became a thing to kind of eventually, after some, twists and turns and roller coasters, to kind of focus on LinkedIn, to supporting people with LinkedIn, because that's really where you can establish your brand, right? But what I found was many people, especially entrepreneurs or business owners, sometimes we're doing something different than we did before. We have tons and tons of expertise, right? But we feel like we don't have the experience because we've never been a consultant before or a coach before, right? So I was finding that we were spending a lot of time building credibility. How do you get that credibility if you've only been doing this for a couple of years or if you've been doing it for a really long time, but it's time to level up, right? It's time to level up. It's time to change things up. So I started to focus to bring PR into the game. Because what happens when you start to focus on publicity is it's not like you're just giving out testimonials, right? That we don't really know who these people are. It's good to have them, but we don't really know if it's your mother or your brother, right? So I started to focus on PR because that is earned credibility, right? When other people are talking about you and telling people that they should be listening to you, I get to borrow, like right now, I get to borrow your credibility, right? People listening to this or watching this are saying if they'd met me on the street, I wouldn't have the same credibility I have today sitting in this room with you guys. So I started to see the power of this for entrepreneurs and small business owners, keeping in mind though that, most of these people don't have a $10,000 or $20,000 a month budget to hire a publicist. So starting to think about how can we do this in a way that allows them to be on that same playing field with the people that have the $10,000 and $20,000 budgets. And obviously it brought me back to LinkedIn because it comes down to relationships, right? You hire publicists for a lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons is for the Rolodex, right? For the people they know. So I started to think, well, how can we do that? How can I do this with small business owners and entrepreneurs? How can we create a powerful network of these journalists and podcast hosts and TV hosts or whatever the media is that you feel would serve your business and your audience, how can we build that same Rolodex? And so I've created this like system that uses LinkedIn and PR to help small business owners build this credibility. Because when you can say to people, well, just throw my name in a Google search and you'll see 5 or 10 pages, that's powerful, right? That's powerful. That's a lot of other people talking about you. So that's kind of how I got to what I'm doing now. Because at the end of the day, we are all looking for attention in the world we're in right now, right? And our visibility, if we're not standing out, we're blending in and we're not making any impact at all. So I'm always looking for ways to authentically show up in a way that gets you that visibility, gets you that credibility, and frankly, allows you to look worthy of the highest ticket contracts. And in this system, we don't have to be going after the $10 times a million things. We can go straight for the $10,000 opportunities and the $20,000 opportunities because we look worthy of them because we've made the time to do that. So that's kind of at the heart of all the things that I do.
So I think it's great breaking down what works in the typical PR space, but adjusting it to the current world, right? Like with all of the small solopreneurs who are trying to just figure this out on their own, they don't have that level of budget, but they still need that credibility or it would really help them get to the next level. So how does this actually work?
The first thing we have to do is make ourselves look credible. And that's where the LinkedIn piece is so important because, yes, you can email them and you could DM them and, you're not really giving them anything more. You're kind of going into the black hole that everybody else is going into. But if you connect with them on LinkedIn and you are already a step ahead because the strength of your profile is coming with you on that connection, right? So I'm going to give you an example of a true example of something that happened with a client of mine. This client is a real estate agent in the Pacific Northwest, and he saw an article written by NBCnews.com online about real estate, right? But I don't even know what that article was about. This real estate agent has an amazing LinkedIn profile, totally positions himself as an expert. Didn't pitch themselves to this journalist, basically took this article that I found, shared it across his social media and his LinkedIn, and said, Mary Smith from NBC News wrote this brilliant article about this. My position on that is, I love that she talked about this and this. Nobody really talks enough about point 2 or whatever. Thanks, Mary, for sharing this. But didn't just tag Mary, connected with Mary on LinkedIn. Right. And connected with Mary and said, just saw your article. I shared it across. You probably have seen it because I've been tagging you everywhere. I'd love to be connected to you, and keep an eye on the kinds of things you're doing. I thought that article was brilliant. I mean, you guys have a media platform here, right? How often does that happen to you every day? Like it doesn't happen every day. People are not taking the time to do that. So Mary, of course, was grateful and said, thank you so much, jumped into the conversations. A week later, Mary said, well, I'm writing a new article, reached out to my client, said, I'm writing a new article. Can I ask you a couple questions? Of course, the answer to that is yes. Ended up being a full page article on NBCnews.com, which is seen by 65 million people, right, about housing prices. Now, I don't know, if somebody in Chicago sees a real estate agent in the Pacific Northwest tagged, there's things as referrals. I'm not really sure where the benefit of that is, but where the benefit is my client is now the only person in his local market that when it comes to getting a listing or a buyer's contract, they can drop that little article on the table and say, well, when I was NBC News' housing price specialist, right? Immediately gives you credibility. And it wasn't him pitching. It wasn't him chasing people. It wasn't him being spamming. It was just him serving, right? It's just serving. So, think about your podcast. And I have a podcast, same thing. If people are share an episode and tag your show and tag you both and talk about it, I'm so grateful for that. I immediately will remember those people. And if they do it more than once, I'm even more grateful. Those are the kinds of people I might say, hey, you know what? I'd love to talk about that on the show. Are you up for being a guest? Or if that person pitches me and says, I loved that you talk about this, this, and this. You probably saw that I shared it. My position on that is this. I think that might be a really fun conversation for your show. What do you think? Are you up for that? Right? So it's just a different way of approaching it, but it might seem on the surface that it takes forever, but it's actually the opposite is true because you get so many more wins. You get so many more successes when you do it this way versus sending out dozens or hundreds of cold pitches. So you can very quickly build a bank of media. And now, of course, you can use those logos everywhere and, all the good things that can happen, right? And this is completely crafted. As much as I'd love to think that Oprah's going to come knocking on my door someday, I'm probably going to have to knock on hers, right? So this is that same concept. So, the reason, though, that I'm using LinkedIn is because that profile piece is the differentiator, right? It's where you can reach out from a position of strength. They can see some of the other media you've done. I mean, can they scroll through your Instagram stuff? Yes. Can they scroll through your Facebook stuff? Yes. But at the end of the day, those platforms are not all business. LinkedIn's all business, right? So you can make it really easy for people to find you and to understand what your position is on these things. And when you're building out a LinkedIn strategy, a strong piece of that strategy should be building connections with your journalists, the local journalists, the podcast hosts, the national journalists, the newspaper magazine writers, the TV hosts, building connections with them and just being a part of their world so that when the opportunity arises, you're already connected, you're already building your relationship, and you're building that Rolodex that many people pay $10,000 or $20,000 a month to have access to.
Yeah. And I think this is an important thing, no matter where you're at in your business, because I mean, there's a lot of people right now who are listening who are probably just at the very beginning stages of even just crafting what their business is going to be. Like they've decided they want to do something, they've kind of got a niche picked out, they kind of have an idea. This is important stuff to start doing right now.
Yes. There's sooner the better.
I mean, so many times you run into people who they think that the hard part is creating the program. And once a program is created, it will somehow sell itself. And then inevitably what happens is that they quote launch and it's right. And then they get into the really hard part, which is actually making your product sell. And in order to do that, you need exposure, you need an audience, you need those connections.
Right.
And so the sooner you start building those connections, building that audience, and what we teach our clients to do is you need to start building an email list. Even if you don't have an offer yet, you can put content out there, you can get featured on podcasts, you can get featured on TV, you can start building that credibility, start building that authority, start building that audience so that when you are ready to launch, you've got people who've been following you, who already know your name, who are already warm to you, which is the important part. They're already warm to you. And that's how you build a ready to buy audience. And that's how you launch and you actually have a 6 or 7.
And that's how you make this magnetic, right? So many people when they start, and I 100% agree with everything you just said, especially, as it relates to the email list. So many people start and they've got 3 people, their mother and a couple of other people, and then they have 10 or 20 people. And they immediately think they need Facebook ads or some kind of ads. And maybe you do, maybe you can do that, right? But that costs money. What if you at the end of every one of these interviews, hopefully you've got the opportunity to say, well, if you want to learn more, and give them your lead magnet, if you're allowed, right? Give them your lead magnet. Now you're building your email list and you're not paying for ads. And if you have a process to do this consistently, it doesn't take that long. It takes a couple hours a week is a ton of time to this effort, and it can help you build your email list. It helps you get that credibility. And as you're doing this, now you have something to email your list because you can say, hey, check me out on Digital Trailblazer podcast last week, right? So now you have something to email them. I don't care if you never create your course, right? Because when somebody calls you and says, hey, Lee, I just heard you on, Karen's podcast. I really want to understand what it's like to work with you. All you have to say is, well, right now I create custom offers for all of my clients. Let's talk about what you need, and then give them something that is not necessarily a $25 something. Maybe it's $500 a month, or maybe it's $5,000 or $10,000. This is so much. You can build wealth and profitable businesses so much faster this way than spending all that time creating your course and paying for Facebook ads and building your list. And I think we both have seen enough of that all 3 of us have seen enough of that to realize how many entrepreneurs get caught up in that. And it breaks my heart a little bit because it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way.
And the other part of that is, and we learned this the hard way as well, is that when you put all that effort into creating the product first without ever building an audience, you're making assumptions as to what you think is going to sell. And you're making assumptions as to what your target audience's problems are, what their struggles are, what their pain points are. You're making assumptions as to
Yes.
all those things. And so often you're not quite hitting the mark, right? And if you get it wrong, then you've got to go back and redo everything,
Yep.
right? Whereas
Yep.
if you had built that audience first, well, now you can send out an email and you can look at the open rates and say, okay, the open rates on this email where I talked about this thing were really good. And when I talked about this other thing, the open rate and the click rate was not so good. When I went to or if you're building a Facebook group is what we like to do, because we can ask questions, we can poll our audience in there, we can do a bunch of things to figure out what the pain points are, what they want, and things like that. We can figure out exactly what they're going to want and what they're going to buy before we ever create it, right?
Right.
And a lot of
Right.
times they'll even ask, when are you going to create a training on this? Or when are you going to do this, that, or the other thing? And that's how we know, okay, well, if they're asking about that now, they're probably going to be willing to pay money for something like that, right? And so then you can craft the product exactly to what they want to buy in the future. And it's so much more profitable to do it that way than, like we said, trying to make all these assumptions at a time and then creating something and then being off the mark and having to redo it all again.
Todd, I couldn't agree more. And I want to add to that, while you're doing all of that, and because I could hear some of the people in the ethers thinking, okay, you want me to build my audience first, but how am I paying the bills until then? Private clients. I know that it's not leveraged. I don't care that it's not leveraged. If you're bringing in a $10,000 client every month from this process that we're talking about here, as you're building your audience, as you're building your Facebook group, as you're polling and you're creating your product, you've got money coming in. I like to refer to it as flipping the funnel, right? Like until you are stable financially, you're going to have to, well, you're not going to have to, but I recommend you do some private client work, because that's higher ticket clients those higher ticket clients will teach you also what are the kinds of things you want to put in your program. And when you start finding things that the same people at the same questions are asked over and over by people, then those are the kinds of things then you put in your program, right? But don't be afraid, because it's not leveraged and you want to worry about your time. Don't be afraid to take on some private clients while you're building your audience for your programs.
I think ultimately, I mean, we work with a lot of folks who have been doing that, and now they're ready for that next stage. They're ready to create their group program. They're ready to take that next step. But a lot of folks, if they haven't done that yet, it's the natural first step, right? It just makes sense. Let's get some clients through the door,
right?
Even just get good at what you're doing, learn what they need, what needs to go into the group program. It's just a wise step for most people. So I totally agree. So with LinkedIn, is there tips on what they need to have on their profile so this kind of backs up the conversations or supports what they're doing?
Yeah, well, so many people look at LinkedIn and as their online resume, right? And your resume is all about who you used to be. Most people don't care about that unless you're looking for a job and somebody's looking for your experience. Your LinkedIn profile should be positioning you for the person you're stepping into, right? Kind of like dress for the job you want. I don't want you to make stuff up, but I want you to start to think about, Karen a year from now, looking back at the year, how was she showing up? How was she, what kind of clients was she working with? And start to step into that with your LinkedIn profile. At the same time, I want you to shine a light on what makes you amazing. It's important. No one's going to think you're better than you say you are. So you're going to have to tell people how good you are at this stuff. But at the same time, people care what's in it for them. So you need to think about what's in it for them. An example that I've been using forever, and it still holds, is, if you're a financial planner and you're looking to build a financial planning business, you can say, I'm a financial planner and I have all these great letters after my name and I earned every one of them. And I want you to be proud of that and lean into that. But so does everybody else on LinkedIn, right? But if you say, I'm a financial planner with all these great letters after my name, and I help women over 50 create enough wealth to retire at 60, now I'm paying attention, right? Now I'm paying attention. So you want to think about, you still want to tell them about you, but you want to make it about them. Your LinkedIn profile is not about your business. But of course, if you and your business are one and the same, which is often the case when people are getting started, you still want to do it from the perspective of why I started this business or why I'm so impressed with the people that I get to work with, And then when you get to the experience section, that's when you can talk a little bit more about the business itself and, as a CEO of blah, 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 blah business, right? So generally, the biggest impact to your profile is shift the energy of your profile from resume to brand. And remember that it's a sales tool. So you want to have kind of a sales copy mindset as you're creating it. And if I can, and I'm not giving specific details here, I certainly can, but there's a lot of sections to your profile. The other thing I would say too is we talked a little bit about how the amazingness of when you're doing this PR strategy and you're being interviewed on other people's podcasts and people reach out to you, how amazing it is to now have incorporated this magnetic, factor into the marketing that you're doing. You also want to do that with your profile with the right keywords, right? If you want to speak, then, and you're a financial coach for men in their 40s, talk about that, because there's going to be a conference somewhere that's going to be looking for a financial coach for men, right? Use those keywords. If you're a real estate agent, the community you serve is a keyword for you, right? If somebody's just looking for a real estate agent, it's going to bring people up all over the world. Is anybody in your town using real estate agent in, Ridgewood, New Jersey? Because if they're not, then yours is going to come up when people search for that stuff, right? So make sure you're thinking about the search, the words that people are looking for in the search, and know that it's a little different than Google, right? It's not like the same as your Google SEO, because on Google, if let's say you're selling a product, people are going to be searching for the product. Nobody's really going to LinkedIn to search for the product, but they might search for a distributor for that product, right? So you want to think about the people you want to be found by on LinkedIn and what are they searching for. So once you've done all of this work, now go back in and see if you can infuse some more of those keywords so that you start coming up in more searches for the exact kind of thing you want to be found for.
So with LinkedIn, in addition to crafting your profile and targeting those keywords, how do you go about making those connections? Are you just directly connecting? Are you sending a message with a connection? Are you commenting on one of their, sharing and commenting on one of their articles and then sending a connection request? How are we doing this?
Such a good question, Todd, because I know there's people listening going, LinkedIn is just a spam fest, right? We're just getting a ton of connection requests that people that are just immediately pitching me. I get that. And it drives me as crazy as it drives all of you. But I will say, if your inbox is full of nothing but that, it probably means you're not using LinkedIn, because as soon as you start to build actual conversations with people, all of that starts to go by the wayside. I like to refer to LinkedIn as your money tree, and that is the weeds. Don't let your money tree get overtaken by the weeds. Like keep at it. So what do you do? I'm not a fan of connecting with hundreds and hundreds of people. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, and I hope everybody here that's listening does connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll see that I have I think 18 or 19,000 connections, but that's because I teach this stuff, right? And when I'm on a podcast, a lot of people connect with me. So as I say this, I want you to understand that it's not like I'm telling you something that I'm not doing. You don't need that many connection requests. If you're connecting, like my goal, if you're listening out there and I say to you, put the focus on putting 2 or 3 people, really highly targeted people on your calendar every week, right? 2 or 3, not 110, right? What would that do for your business? So thinking about maybe 5 or 6 or 7 people you want to reach out to every week. You want to be continually building your network, because if you're just reactive, now you have a network that you really don't have any control over. But if you're proactively connecting with 5 to 10 people each week, with the goal of literally getting on the phone with every one of them, that's probably not going to happen, but that should be your goal. You're not looking to have connections just for the sake of having connections. Think about there's so many things you do in the week, right? Did you attend a summit, and did you connect with the speakers that were on that summit? Are you going to a conference? Are you connecting with the speakers at the conference? What podcast did you listen to this week? Did you connect with the hosts from those podcasts? Right? So there's almost never a reason to do cold outreach. If you want to do cold outreach, there's still ways to warm it up, right? Like if, for example, if you're going to be speaking at a conference in Colorado and the conference is for accountants, you may want to start connecting with accountants in Colorado 6 months before that, right? But what you can basically do is tell them why you're connecting with them and say, hey, I've got this opportunity. I'm going to be spending a lot of time in Colorado with Colorado natives over the next 6 months. And I'm trying to get a feel for the accounting industry in Colorado. I'm obviously making this up as I go. If we, there's better ways to do this, but do you understand what I'm saying? Because then when that conference comes, you're going to go back into your first degree network. You're going to pull up all the accountants in Colorado that you're first degree connected with, and you're going to message them all and say, hey, that conference is coming up. I got 5 free passes. Do you want one? Or are you going to be there? What happens when they show up now, they're your buyers for one thing, right? And the conference people love that you're bringing people to the conference. Your network loves that you're just engaging with them. So there are times that I might recommend doing some cold outreach, like in an example like that. But we still want to do it as we want to find a way to do it where it's as warm as possible. But truthfully, if you're just go through, the journalist piece of this is the easiest part because they're prolific, right? Find 10 articles that, you want to talk, that you enjoyed this week, and connect with the 10 writers and just say, hey, I loved this article about that. I want to connect with you here on LinkedIn. So that's the easy part. It's the part about, and I honestly, when I'm building a LinkedIn strategy with somebody, the piece we're looking at last is really going straight for the sale. Because if you go for the journalists, and then the other category I would be focused on is partners, right? Who else has an audience of people similar to your audience? In which case that outreach is, hey, I saw you spoke at this conference. I was a speaker at this conference. I'd love to connect because maybe we can collaborate and support each other somehow, right? So you want to build a network of that. Those second 2 categories is where that magnetic approach comes with LinkedIn. That first category where you're doing that outreach, that's what everyone else is doing, and it doesn't work as well, right? So I would say dial it down. 3, 5, 6, 8 new connections a week is a ton, and with the goal of being really targeted and approach it as warm as possible, and just ignore all the spam. You're still going to get people that say, what do you want? And that's okay. Say, all right, I got you. No problem. Go about your business. Maybe you're a part of a Facebook group. Like maybe your Facebook group, you can put an initiative in there that says, hey, are we all connected on LinkedIn? You don't need to be connected to everyone, but connect with the 5 or 10 each week that in your mind is a reason to connect with. Do you belong to a chamber of commerce? Mind the directory. Don't connect with everyone. Connect with the people that for some reason you think might be a good person for you to connect with. Join a chamber of commerce to do that. If you serve women, join National Association of Women Business Owners. Do it with their directory. There's no end of warm ways to connect with people on LinkedIn, and yet everybody's doing all this cold spamming stuff.
And I like the examples you're giving because they're much more specific and they're better reason. Because typically what I see when somebody's doing cold outreach is I get a message like, hey, Todd, or sometimes they'll because they're copying and pasting a script, and sometimes they'll still say name, right?
Right. Or if you have sometimes people have their name and then a star after it, they'll know immediately that it was copied and pasted, right?
Yeah, or it's the wrong name because it was a copy and paste from the previous one, right? But it's like, hey, I noticed that we were in the same Facebook group together, and I like connecting with like-minded people. And it's like, okay, I know a pitch is coming next, so there's no way I'm connecting, right?
Yep. And keep in mind too, and this is something that is really, I find people have a hard time with. People don't want your crap because they don't know you. I don't care how good it is. I don't care how valuable it is. It might be the best webinar they are ever going to see, but they don't know you. I'm not watching your webinar if I don't know you. I don't care how good it is. So you've got to take the time to build a relationship first. LinkedIn is not really the place to be list building directly, right? Sending out a ton of connections and a ton of messages and saying, hey, get on my free webinar. You're going to get a few that way, but mostly you're going to annoy people. And then the next time you go to reach out to that person, they're going to see that message from 2 years ago, right? In that stream. And you're going to be like, oh, I wish I never sent that, because they never did anything with it. Right. So really it's truly about getting people on the phone. That's where the biggest value is, or getting meetings with them. I mean, I can go on and on. If you're going to a conference, you can use LinkedIn. I had a client who was speaking at a conference in India, and she's in New Jersey. Didn't know a soul, was flying all the way to India. And by the time she got there, she had lunch and coffee dates scheduled, because she was reaching out to the speakers ahead of time. Not all of them, but the ones she thought she would vibe with for whatever reason. I speak on LinkedIn at conferences. I go to every conference in person that I speak at with a stack of Dunkin' Donuts gift cards, and I give them to people that have connected with me on LinkedIn ahead of time. I am not going to go broke. giving out Dunkin' Donuts gift cards because people don't even connect with the LinkedIn speaker on LinkedIn before the conference. If you do that, so there's just so many ways you can use LinkedIn to deepen what you're already doing instead of just trying to throw spaghetti at the wall and do one more thing.
It's been a common theme through several of our past episodes of that differentiating factor, right? How can you stand out from what everybody else is doing? Because that's the thing, like, you go through a course, you learn a script, and suddenly you've got thousands upon thousands of people copying and pasting the exact same script, and everybody's seeing that in their DMs. And if you're the next person that's copying and pasting that same script into the DMs, well, guess what? You're going to get ignored just like everybody else. You got to find some way of doing it different. That's what's really going to separate you from everybody else.
Yeah. And I will say, as much as I do not want you using AI tools to spin out a bunch of messages and a connection request, there are a lot of ways you can use AI and leverage your time. So I'm not saying we're throwing all that out. I want to spend as less time in front of my computer as everybody else does, right? So how can we do this in a way that we're leveraging these tools that are available to us? We're connecting, you can do that even by, who's your audience? Go into an AI tool, say, what are the top 25 podcasts they listen to? Now give me 25 more, now give me 25 more, and then connect with those podcast hosts, so we can leverage our time in other ways.
So we mentioned a little bit about list building. So now that we're building this network on LinkedIn, how do we get these people onto our list? What's a good strategy to do?
Yeah. Well, obviously there's a posting strategy, right? So you can occasionally post some stuff about your list. But the list building strategy, the best way to build your list on LinkedIn are those second two categories, right? When you're interviewed on a podcast, when you're, featured in a newspaper or magazine, and you can share your lead magnet or your website or whatever, and that will drive people to your email list. That is a much faster way than just trying to get people on your list. But there are things on LinkedIn that we can take advantage of. There's places that you can put links. You definitely want in your about section to have a call to action. So you can put a link in there to your lead magnet. You can do a newsletter. And if you do a newsletter once a week, in your newsletter, you can say, hey, did you grab we've got this new free training that we just did. Have you seen it yet? So there's lots of ways you can do list building within LinkedIn that isn't spamming people saying, watch my webinar. There's lots of other places we can do that.
And I like that strategy of, not just making the pitch right away or sending that DM in the messages right away about, hey, by the way, check out my free PDF or whatever it is, right? It's that low resistance, just small next step, just these small incremental steps all along the way, because that's the way like real marketing is done.
Yep.
That's the way that you're going to build a long-term, successful, legitimate business that can survive the ups and downs of, whatever trends are going on or algorithm changes or economies or whatever else, is just by building a system that incrementally takes people step by step closer and closer towards a sale. But we're not trying to hit that sale right away on the very first interaction like a lot of people are trying to do.
Yep. And I would say, though, because LinkedIn is all business, right? Nobody's expecting you to post pictures of your dogs or your kids there, even though you can, right? It's not really what they're expecting. Don't wait too long. Don't BS people with, hey, I found this article I thought you'd be interested in. People will see right through that. You don't be real. Have actual conversations with them, and then follow up. If you have a conversation with somebody and it's not the right time, but they said they were going to Disneyland with their kids, follow up in a month or two and check in and say, hey, hey, Todd, I was thinking about you today because I saw a Mickey Mouse commercial. How'd that vacation with your kids go? There's a short game on LinkedIn, but the long game is where the real money is.
And do not make the cringy posts about, oh, my dog died today. Here's what it taught me about business, right?
Yes.
Awesome. This has been a great conversation, Karen. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are quite curious to check you out and learn more about you. So where should they head?
Yeah, well, first of all, you should connect with me on LinkedIn. And my Karen Yankovich, which is, if you're watching this, it's out here, but it's spelled just like it sounds. My website is KarenYankovich.com. I'm Karen Yankovich on all social media. And one of the things that we've created, because one of the things that I found was when I am talking to an audience like this of people that haven't necessarily used LinkedIn a lot, and maybe some of you have, right? But if you haven't, or even if you have and you're not sure if you're doing it in a way, there's a better way to do it. If you go to any of those places or my website, or if you go to KarenYankovich.com/quiz, you'll see that we've got a quiz, and it's just a how do I get started on LinkedIn kind of quiz. What are some things to try? What are some things to not do based on your it's a what's your marketing style quiz. So, it's got some, we didn't just do, and, based on this, we think you should do this and this. We actually really went deep into psychology on it and things that based on your style, if you're a white paper type person, you may feel a little bit less comfortable with the outreach. So try this and maybe stay away from that. So there's a lot of really good stuff in it, and it's completely free. So it's a great way to get started. We give you a ton of value in this, and I would love to share that with anybody that wants it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have the links to everything in the show notes and description. Thank you so much for being with us, Karen.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. This has been great.
You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.